Deep in the heart of Transylvania, enshrouded by a veil of mist and cloaked in mystery, lies the Hoia Baciu forest, a place as haunting as it is haunted. And it's known as Romania's Bermuda Triangle. This ancient woodland is more than just a collection of trees, though. It's a labyrinth of legends, each more chilling than the last. And with a history steeped in tales of unexplained phenomena and spectral sightings, Hoia Baciu invites the brave and the curious to step into its shadows and discover what lies beyond the realm of the known.
Hello citizen. Be advised this content creator is human and is therefore subject to human error. Any information provided by this content creator should be cautiously approached as it may be nothing more than allegation. Remember, trust your government, consume appropriate content, and be cautious of all conspiracy theories as they are the tools of the rebellion.
Hey guys, welcome back to the 21 CD podcast. As always, I'm your ghost, John. I want to thank everybody for being here, especially all you newbies and all of my OGs in the back. Thank you, everybody, for being here. If you guys do want to support the show, please just Google the 21 CD podcast and follow me everywhere. Share my links. A number of you guys did comment that you had been sharing my stuff, and I did notice a spike in followers, so I really appreciate that. We can't climb to the top of this algorithm without you guys. You guys are literally the only way that the 21 CD podcast even gets seen, so I can't afford to pay for advertising or anything like that. But if you guys do want to support me financially, you can use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and for those of you that continue to donate, thank you so much. As a lot of you know, in September I'm returning to Iceland, where I will be filming a movie searching for the hidden folk. This will be my second time in Iceland. I am extremely excited to go, and as always, your donations help me out immensely to complete these types of projects and to get you some merch, which you can find on 21cdstudios.com, as well as all the updates. That's pretty much our mothership now, but you can also find me on Instagram as well. And last but not least, before we get into the fun stuff, I do want to make a really fun announcement. I am going to try to do 3 episodes a week. And before you get too excited, no, it's not going to be 3 hours. It's going to be like 2 10 to 15 minute episodes discussing a very pointed topic. It's going to be called the What Is It show, and it's just going to be like part of the 21 CD podcast. And we're going to be like, what is Dogman? What are aliens? You know, what is the Project Blue Book? All that kind of stuff. And we're just going to talk about it for 10 to 15 minutes. And yeah, I'm hoping to release 2 of those types of episodes a week, in addition to your regularly scheduled hour-long episodes. So yeah, to find out all of these other updates and everything, go ahead and head on over to 21cdstudios.com to get the lowdown. All right, let's get into this week's episode. I've had a dog hair in my mouth since I started this episode, and now I just got it. I'm sorry if you guys have been seeing me suck on my fingers. that wasn't intentional. I had a dog hair in my mouth because I have a dog. So, but anyway, here we go. So yes, we're in Romania. We're talking Transylvania, guys. This place, this forest, this forest, the Hoia Baciu, is actually only 4 hours from the castle that inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. So that's pretty cool, and also kind of gives you the backdrop for the type of area that we're talking about. And we all know how the story of Dracula, inspired by Vlad the Impaler and all that, shaped how we view vampires in the modern age. And I wonder how much of a disservice that really is in the grand scheme of things. It kind of feels like a Masonic cult type activity, doesn't it? Where it's just like, there's too many of a certain type of monster and people are starting to catch on. We need to do something drastic to change our image. And the best way they did that, the best way they found to do that was to make vampires sound absolutely ridiculous so that they could go into hiding and take up their roles as world leaders and politicians and CEOs, as well as your renegades that live under bridges. And there's monsters everywhere out there, right? And I digress, to be honest. This isn't about vampires. I have not written Vampires Part 2 yet, but it's an interesting segue from a couple episodes ago to now. And Hoia Baciu is more than just eerie sights and sounds, by the way. It's a place where the fabric of reality seems to be thinner than everywhere around it. It's one of those places that on this podcast we call a dimensional bleed, where it seems like two dimensions are colliding and creating sort of an atmosphere, an environment that is, as a whole, a portal. To another world, to another realm, to another dimension. However you view it, it brings you elsewhere and brings things from elsewhere here. Electronic devices don't seem to work here. They just malfunction nonstop. Compasses, they spin wildly, and some travelers even talk about how after coming out of the forest, they noticed that time was different. It didn't pass the same way in the forest as it seems to do outside of the forest. People say that what happens in the forest seems to only take minutes, but those minutes are hours outside of the forest. And that's something that people report semi-regularly. It's almost as if the forest itself can bend time. So all sorts of people go to the forest, of course. It's your typical thing. We've got YouTubers and TV shows that have gone to the forest to try to figure out what's going on there. You also have cults and religious fanatics that go there from many different types of religions, by the way. You do have the ancient occult, you have more modern occult, but you also have a Christian pilgrimage route that for some reason goes through the Hoia Baciu forest. So that is also very interesting. All this stuff kind of combines to make it sort of understandable why this place is so bizarre, and maybe why some of these strange things are happening here. People who go into the forest generally report that it is very silent. It feels like at any given time something could jump out at you, or that you're being watched all the time. People say that they do feel like they're being watched whenever they're in the forest. And they report voices and laughter and crying and all sorts of human sounds from what some say are ghosts and others say are spirits. But regardless, there seems to be a lot of spirit activity in the woods. Okay, there is one story, too, that is just ridiculously fascinating, and I wasn't going to talk about it initially because I didn't think it was verifiable, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous. It was an insane story, and now it's even more insane because I think I actually believe it. And it's it's one of the most famous stories from the Hoia Baciu forest. And on the 21 CD podcast, I generally try to find some stuff that maybe other people haven't really talked about on podcasts before, even if it is in a very familiar place like Skinwalker Ranch or something like that. I'll still usually try to find something that most people haven't heard before. So I wasn't going to tell the most famous story of the disappearing shepherd, but as I started doing more research on it, I came to find out that it's actually pretty on brand for the show and also pretty crazy. So we're going to talk about it. The story of the disappearing shepherd in Hoia Baciu is definitely one of the most enduring legends associated with the area. It adds significantly to the reputation of the forest. And some say that the forest is even named after him, that the shepherd was named Hoia Baciu or some variation of the words, even though others say that his name has been lost to time because it isn't actually found in any historical writings. So like many legends, specific details can be scarce, and as we all know, stories change with every retelling a little bit, right? But that doesn't mean that the story's not true or that the deep underlying message is not valid. There's something here. There's when it comes to oral history, it started somewhere and it started for some reason. And we should treat a lot of that oral history as literal, I think, a lot of the time. You kind of have to go through a mindset change, though, to get to that point. Just try it, though, and listen to this story. So the story likely originated sometime in the mid-20th century, but again, exact dates are hard to pinpoint. And it, of course, seemed to become more popular and widely shared after the forest gained a level of notoriety for other paranormal activities, because, of course, there's more than just one story from this area. And those other stories usually involve the UFO sightings from the 1960s, where there were some insane pictures captured of UFOs in this area, and we will get to those later. But regardless, the story kind of, ramped up in popularity thanks to those UFO sightings, and that's kind of what made this place a bit of a tourist attraction in the more modern times. That's just the way it goes sometimes. And according to the legend, the shepherd was a local man. He was responsible for grazing his flock. He probably owned this flock of sheep. And this was a very typical, common practice in rural Romania. Shepherding has been a tradition there, a traditional occupation, I should say, for centuries. It's one of the things they are known for. And like we said before, the identity of the Hoia Baciu forest shepherd is really not documented, but it's not that important. But what does seem to be pretty steadfast is that he had around 200 sheep that he took into the forest. This detail is kind of deeply rooted in the folklore. So right off the bat, I attached myself to the 200, and I was like, well, is it 200 or is it 20 or is it 10? Because sometimes these numbers, they're not consistent. But this one seemed to be pretty consistent. So he reportedly entered the forest with 200 sheep, which is a substantial amount of sheep, first of all. It indicates that he was a significant caretaker of livestock, possibly and most definitely relying on this flock for his livelihood and the economic well-being of his family. This guy wasn't just walking around with his dog and his donkey. This was everything that most likely made him money and ensured the survival of both himself and his household. So the mention of 200 sheep in the legend is significant, both within the context of the story and the broader cultural and symbolic meanings. So in rural settings, especially in a historical context, the size of a flock was kind of directly tied to the economic well-being of the shepherd, right? So owning 200 sheep would have made this shepherd fairly prosperous. Sheep are very, very valuable for their wool, their milk, and their meat. So the loss of such a large flock would be pretty much economically devastating for this family, which kind of emphasizes the high stakes of the story. He wasn't just bringing 200 sheep into the woods without feeling fairly confident, I would imagine. I don't think this was some kind of suicide mission on behalf of the shepherd to, sort of take all his wealth to the grave. His wealth was in the form of sheep. And he took those sheep into this forest. That implies he knew where he was going, right? You wouldn't just wander like that with something so valuable. He probably doesn't want to risk his sheep. That's what I'm trying to say. So there's no way that he's just wandering around randomly in the forest. This sort of lends some credibility, in my opinion, to the story. A large number of missing sheep, as opposed to maybe a few number of missing sheep, might be seen as more credible in terms of evidence. So if it really was an insane thing that happened, people are going to remember it because of the amount of sheep. They're not going to remember if it was 5 sheep, but if it's 200 sheep, people are going to be like, that was insane. That would be like Donald Trump taking all his money and just wandering off into the woods, never to be seen again. It would be like, what just happened? It's the same thing. So in my opinion, that sort of gives this story some credibility, that it may have been able to actually withstand the test of great time. And it may have actually been true because it actually was that weird. It's also significant, the number, for a couple of other reasons, especially those with Christian influences. Sheep have significant symbolic value. They're often symbols of innocence and purity. In the Bible, the number 200 appears several times, often in context suggesting wealth and significant offerings. So the loss of 200 sheep in a mysterious, possibly supernatural context might resonate with these deeper symbolic or scriptural themes. I'm not sure. I just see numbers and my brain starts working in a certain way, so I thought I'd look that up. It only gets weirder. The shepherd, along with his entire flock of sheep, allegedly vanished without a trace after entering the Hoia Baciu forest. And never were any bodies, any animal remains, any blood, not even any sign of disturbance from tracks, as if maybe the sheep started running or something like that. Maybe there was a fight amongst some hounds or something in the woods. Nothing. There was a complete absence of any trace of the man or his sheep. And it said that a search was undertaken to find him or any remains of the flock, but the searches turned up nothing. Okay, this kind of fuels speculation about supernatural causes, in my opinion. It gives the forest, it starts to feel like something abnormal is going on here if you can't find 200 sheep and a man in the woods, right? I kind of looked at, well, what would a manhunt look like back then? Like what would a manhunt, how would they find him? What does a search look like back then? And it turns out it does look a lot like searches do now. It turns out we've been searching for people in the same way for quite a long time. Specific details about these searches are not very well documented in historical records, but the story is kind of deeply rooted in local folklore, and using how they do it now and how we researched how far back they have been doing searches in certain ways, we sort of decide that they probably searched in similar fashions as they do now. So that's kind of how I came to this idea. So that would mean that the local community would come together to search for these missing individuals, just like they do in all of our missing 411 cases. And in the case of the shepherd, it's likely that he knew many fellow villagers, family members, and possibly even local authorities, and they all would have been involved in the search, right? Searches back then would probably typically cover all areas of the forest known to be paths or places where the shepherd might have gone, okay? And this would include checking known shelters, water sources, rivers, streams, ponds, any other places where he might have sought refuge or where the sheep might have corralled. The searches might have extended over several days or even several weeks, depending on the evidence they were finding. Given the size of the flock and the serious implications of their disappearance, they probably searched for a little while. And the narrative might also include details about searchers combing the edge of the forest, from edge to edge, possibly even expanding the search beyond the forest a little bit to see if he accidentally came out the other side, or if there were robbers who were taking the sheep out of a different part of the forest through the fields that surrounded the forest. Locals are going to be very familiar with the terrain and the behavior of livestock in their area, and this would assist them in their efforts because they could use that knowledge to predict the shepherd's movements. Being in an area where there was a lot of shepherding, the shepherds kind of have a way of doing things, just like fishermen have a way of doing things, builders and carpenters have ways of doing things, and every specialized craft has a way of doing their things. The fellow shepherds would probably be able to use that knowledge to help track the lost shepherd. And this would undoubtedly include understanding the natural behaviors of sheep when they're frightened or when they're lost, checking difficult terrains where sheep have been found, where they might be found, where they could have strayed. The point that I'm trying to make is that there would be an insane amount of knowledge and intent going into a search party even back then. So not being able to find a shepherd and his 200 sheep, despite that, implies something maybe spiritual or supernatural, right? In many cultures, in cases like this, especially in stories involving mysterious or supernatural elements, it's not uncommon for the search efforts to include consultations as well with spiritual leaders, or the use of rituals that are believed to protect searchers or to invoke the return of the lost. There were a number of bizarre religions going on in this area, and so undoubtedly some of that probably came into play as well. And as with many such legends, when extensive searches yield no results, the efforts just gradually diminish, just like they do now. Fewer and fewer people are searching until nobody's searching. The community reluctantly accepts the possibility that supernatural forces might be at play. We see that with Missing 411 every once in a while, and it's really interesting to see a massive amount of people come to the conclusion that, hey, maybe something deeply abnormal actually happened. Maybe they didn't get eaten by coyotes or robbed by burglars or whatever. Like, maybe they actually got abducted by something and they're gone. They're in the earth or above the earth. They're somewhere else. Now, many locals and visitors have speculated that the shepherd's disappearance absolutely was the result of paranormal forces within the forest. And many believe, he probably stumbled upon a portal to another world or dimension. That's personally what I believe. It's a common theme in Hoia Baciu stories, to be honest. There's a lot of coming and going that can't really be explained in this forest. Skeptics and some researchers obviously propose more rational explanations, suggesting animal attacks, but I mean, come on, 200 and there's no trace of them. That's just impossible. Others suggest that maybe he was the victim of some sort of accident, or that he intentionally left to start a new life elsewhere. But these theories don't really explain the disappearance of the entire flock. So yeah, this story definitely adds a layer of mystique and cautionary tale about the forest. I'm not going to lie, but I still want to go. Maybe not anytime now, because as you can see on this map, this probably isn't the most peaceful area to be around right now. But crazy story. And, many visitors, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but many visitors have actually reported feeling characteristics of time slips, the time slip anomaly in the forest. And I wanted to discuss the sort of the nature of time slip anomalies for those who might not be very familiar. There's a couple big characteristics. So one is like the altered perception of time. And in this case, some visitors reported walking what should be a short distance, only to find that hours have passed by the time they actually reach their destination, or by the time they make it back to their starting point. Conversely, they might feel like they've been walking for hours, only to find that very little time has actually elapsed. and their watches and their Apple Watches and their phones and whatnot, they don't really seem to be able to understand how time is passing during these instances. Then, of course, there's missing time, which is also another time slip anomaly. And this phenomenon involves individuals or groups who can't really account for a period while in the forest. There's a whole chunk of time that's just disappeared. They entered a certain time and they exit with a gap in their memory or a discrepancy in the time that they can't really explain through normal means. I've had that happen, and it's absolutely bizarre and horrifying. I talked about it on the podcast at one point when I believe that I went through my own dimensional bleed with my brother. I'm sorry, I don't remember what episode it is, but I'm sure somebody will leave it in the comments. Alongside these experiences, obviously, people are often reporting feeling disoriented and confused, as you can imagine, and this contributes to their altered perception of time. Of course, something is actually happening, and then the human brain starts working and makes it worse. The human brain is a very powerful thing, and this can be particularly disconcerting, right? When familiar paths seem unfamiliar, or you're being led to unexpected places you didn't think you were going towards. Now, we could go over like the reasons that people think that maybe this is happening, like the scientific reasonings. People are saying that natural causes are most of what's to blame here. And yeah, in my world, cryptids are sort of natural causes because they actually exist. But within the scientific community, they kind of say that it's probably geomagnetic anomalies that are present in the area. It could influence human perception. Certain areas here are known to have higher concentrations of electromagnetic fields, and that can cause disorientation or affect your brain activity. So yeah, and when it comes to the psychological factor, the power of suggestion plays a significant role, right? You go into the forest, you know the forest reputation, you're automatically gonna force yourself to start trying to make things happen. That's natural. But is that really the case in some of these bigger, more unexplainable situations? I don't think so. That's just what they want you to think. It's so funny how whenever these people who don't believe in this kind of stuff, whenever they try to explain why you shouldn't believe in it, they say it's because you made it up in your head. That just doesn't even seem like proof. Like, that just seems like a weird argument. Like, you made that up. Well, okay, I saw something. Like, I'm making up that I see something. And if you're not making up that you see something, your brain is subconsciously making something to put in your vision, essentially. Those are their two main arguments, and they're both BS, in my opinion. Personally, I do think that the forest is a resting place for a Stargate. And I think of one of significant importance, just like Mount Shasta, the Superstition Mountains, the Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku, the pyramids, the Stonehenge, countless other places on the planet. I have a whole book right here called Megaliths. This is a dope book. Check it out. Studies in Stone. You can find out all about these Stargates we've got out here. And I think this place is one more place like that. And this next bit that I'm going to put out here, what you hear me saying, is comprised of several articles that they're talking in a variety of ways about this Stargate. And I liked what these articles were saying. You can find the links to them in the descriptions if you want to read them for yourself. I did kind of tear them apart and dissect them because some of these things I believed in and some of these things weren't exactly going with my research. But overall, what I'm about to read you kind of really sums up the next most mysterious thing about this forest and why I think there's a Stargate there, why I think it is a Stargate. There's this place in the Hoia Baciu forest where the trees suddenly just stop. And they form a circle. And some people call it the circle, some people call it the clearing, but it's a mysterious, near-perfect circle in the center of the forest where no vegetation grows. Soil samples have been taken and tests for radiation have been ran all around the circle, right? And they all return the same results to the rest of the forest. Like, it's the same ground, the same soil, the same chemicals, the same minerals and nutrients. It's the same thing. So there's no real good explanation for why nothing is growing in this massive circle in the forest. And if you guys are watching me or listening to me on the podcast, just so you know, on YouTube, I do have video content and I'm uploading images there. So get with it. But anyway, so yeah, trees outside the circle, though, grow in really bizarre sort of twisted ways, kind of in zigzag patterns and in clockwise spirals. Some of them are like bent, they're tangled in weird ways, and science really has yet to explain this. A lot of their explanations involve they say that the people who were here before molded the trees in this way to assist them in shipbuilding, but there's no proof of that either. You know, it's just a convenient explanation for something that is unexplainable. Some say that the strongest evidence, like the actual hard evidence of supernatural activity, took place within this circle when the television show Destination Truth was filming there about 10 years ago. One of the crew, his name was Evan, suddenly flew through the air as he sat in this circle. And following the appearance of a sudden flash of light, Evan suddenly flew from one side of the clearing to the other. He ended up finding wounds on his arms, and despite them being covered in long sleeves, by the way, there were wounds beneath his sleeves. And the most frightening aspect of the encounter were the claims by Evan that just prior to that sudden force that moved him, that launched him from one side of the circle to the other, he was hearing strange female voices from behind him. And there used to be video of this online, and I saw several people saying that this was a very bizarre video to witness. YouTube seems to have taken it down, and I can't really find it anywhere, and that is just so ironic, isn't it? But here is a frame from the video, the moment that he was ripped from his current location and began to be launched to the other side of the circle. It does seem like there is a bizarre flash of light, and we see some distortion here, often caused by rapid movement in low light situations on cameras. I'm not gonna lie, this looks kind of legit. Don't know what it is, but it does seem to fit the description of what's happening, what they're saying is happening. You'll have to be the judge for yourself. And if anybody can find that video, email it to me at 21cdstudios@gmail.com. There's another story, and this is where stuff really starts getting ripping and roaring. Emil Bernia, who was a military technician, helped Hoia Baciu gain fame by claiming that he saw a spacecraft of aliens in the forest. He also clicked a photograph of the spacecraft. The image caught the attention of people across the globe. The specific area of Hoia Baciu where the alien craft is believed to have landed is called the clearing. It's the circle. Surprisingly, that particular area is completely empty, as there is not a single tree. Not even grass grows there most times of the year. Furthermore, the trees around this place are not even particularly big. Unlike other UFO sightings, Barnia had nothing to gain from reporting the sighting. And as a matter of fact, he had everything to lose, because the communist government equated a belief in the paranormal with madness and state sabotage, and Barnia lost his job in a country which had no support for the UFO stories. So this wasn't even a good thing for him to come out and say, and yet he did. Not only did he say stuff, he took photos. Before Barnia's photograph, biologist Alexander Sift took great interest in the stories of the strange happenings inside the forest. And in the early 60s, he began to venture out into the woods to research light and magnetism, strange light and magnetic phenomena happening in the woods. People also report seeing ectoplasm there. And allegedly, he gathered substantial photographic evidence. But, wouldn't you know it, Sif died in 1993, and he too became part of the mystery of the forest because after his death, all of his evidence disappeared. It went missing. It's never been recovered. Nobody knows where all his photographs and his writings went. They're just gone. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that kind of stuff too. Okay, so maybe something actually is happening here. If the UFOs are landing in this circle, maybe this is the Stargate, the forest itself. Sifton was said to have photographed flying objects in the forest in the 60s. And some said that they saw a strange light in the sky of Hoia Baciu, and also an object like a flying saucer after him and around the 60s. Some have even claimed to have met aliens in these woods. But, of course, no proof of this has been found thus far. Stories and theories, of course, of portals to other dimensions or realms within the Hoia Baciu forest are, of course, significant to the lore. It's a significant portion. This place is very much focused on the portal or the dimensional travel sort of idea. Some people call it the gateway to hell, the forest where the devil lives, stuff like that. But pretty much, there's definitely some discrepancies maybe about where the portals go, but everybody's pretty on board that, oh yeah, this is definitely an entrance or an exit, some sort of dimensional gateway. It's impossible to believe that all of these disappearances and these UFO phenomena, and all that kind of stuff, it's not all accidental. It's all coming back to the fact that this place is probably dimensional bleed, a location of dimensional bleed, right? I mean, that's what I believe. After reading all these stories, after doing all this research, I mean, obviously, you guys probably haven't read as much on it as I have within the past 8 hours, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. This Romanian forest is notorious for paranormal activity, including these aliens, apart from these aliens. And the idea of the portal aligns with how aliens are connected with the cryptids on the ground, with disappearances, with fallen angels using portals in the disguised image of aliens. Some believe that certain areas within Hoia Baciu act as gateways or portals to other dimensions, and these portals are said to explain the sudden appearances and disappearances of both people and objects. The bizarre behavior of animals, the explosions of light, the unexplained malfunctioning of electronic devices. One specific area often mentioned in these stories is that large clearing, the circle. So if aliens are coming here, UFOs are being spotted above this area, yeah, it might be some sort of point of, importance. Despite scientific investigation, no one's been able to determine why nothing grows in this spot. The clearance is frequently cited as a potential portal area, with visitors reporting feelings of nausea, anxiety, or the sensation of being watched. Some claim to have seen strange lights or experienced shifts in perception while in or near this clearing. What if our shepherd was roaming this way to come to this field, to graze his sheep in this field, and this is where he disappeared from? I mean, that seems kind of like a valid thought to me. There are accounts of people disappearing for a short period, only to reappear with no memory of where they were or what even happened to them. And these stories often suggest that the individuals might have passed right through a portal without even knowing it, and then returned. I think that happens a lot, to be honest. I think most of the times that we have abnormal experiences or sightings or whatever you want to call them, it's often involving a portal, and we might not even know it. There's a couple theories behind this portal idea. Researchers and paranormal investigators have measured, like kind of we said before, significant electromagnetic fluctuations in the forest. And some speculate that is evidence of portal activity. These fields might actually alter human perceptions, or even, as some theories suggest, bend space-time continuum at certain points. In local folklore, references to spirits or entities that guide or guard or hunt in the forest use these portals to move between their world and ours. Such stories are likely influenced by historical and religious beliefs. Is it weird if I find both of those things equally plausible? Skeptics argue that the portal experiences might be psychological effects caused by the forest's eerie environment. This is where we were talking about before. You're making it up in your head, and even if you don't know it, you're still making it up in your head. This is sensory deprivation and combined with a sort of general feeling of nervousness or fear that you put within yourself because of that. You know, the sensory deprivation of not being able to see the sun and the sky, and then you start psyching yourself out. Now all of a sudden there's a portal, and now you've lost time. That's how they believe it happens. Sure, not everything is something. I get it, but that does feel like a bit of a stretch. Earlier we mentioned this weird pilgrimage path. It's this fascinating trail, I guess, whatever you want to call it, that somehow uses the forest as part of its path for some reason. And it's marked by this strange M symbol, which I know it's not an M. I don't think it's an M, but it's on various trees and elsewhere in the forest. And the idea is that it guides the path for the Maria Ut. And I guess that is some kind of pilgrimage endeavor. There's many places in Hungary. It's also part of the El Camino pilgrimage route, and it's based on the Marian veneration of the Central European people. It connects Marian shrines and historical and culturally valuable places along the route. There's a couple of different religions that use it, allegedly. And the pilgrimage route is usually taken on foot. So weird. You got a pilgrimage here. You've got accounts of people doing rituals here, which we'll talk about in a second. You've got UFO sightings here. You've got missing 411 cases here. It's, talk of portals. It's very fascinating to me that there is a very religious pilgrimage route that runs through this forest. And to this day, if you guys think like this is bleeding into the modern times, like this isn't even in the past anymore. This is real. And also real and happening to this day, visitors of Hoia Baciu are still reporting emerging from the forest with rashes or skin irritations and sometimes scratches and bruises. And these symptoms are described as sudden. They just happen. And there doesn't seem to be some kind of apparent cause. The most common ailment are these red sort of itchy patches that you get on the skin, like you've had some kind of allergic reaction. And that's what a lot of people say it is. There's some kind of flora or fauna or whatever in the woods, and most people are allergic to it for some reason. But others speculate that this may be paranormal activity or exposure to unknown environmental factors. I don't know how many of you guys have seen that movie Annihilation, where the alien essentially copies human biology and perfects it, but it is insane. So check out the movie Annihilation if you haven't yet. I do very much enjoy that movie for the most part. But it's the same way. You're subjected to environmental factors that you're just not familiar with because they might not be from your realm. They're bleeding into your realm from somewhere else. There's also been like radiation-like effects Anecdotal reports of symptoms that resemble mild radiation sickness, including nausea, fatigue, and disorientation. These reports are often associated with specific areas in the forest known for high paranormal activity, such as the Circle. Paranormal researchers and enthusiasts sometimes hypothesize that these symptoms could be due to electromagnetic fields or other unmeasured environmental energies that might affect human health. Pretty crazy stuff. And various research teams have conducted investigation in Hoia Baciu to measure these environmental factors, any environmental factors that could explain these physical symptoms. And most of the time they're focusing on these electromagnetic fields because these are known to cause physiological effects at certain intensities. But, of course, no conclusive evidence of portals or demons has arisen. They're not really sure what's going on. But when you hear all this stuff, combine it with the countless tales of the countless missing 411 tales, right? Like some of these people that have gone missing, we're going to tell one of these stories later, of a little girl who went missing. She returns in the same clothes years later. You know, you have people who disappear, vanish without a trace. There's no reasonable explanation. You have extensive research or search parties going out. You have people who know the area well. You have experts on the terrain. You know, and in this case, experts measuring soil, like what's in the soil, why is stuff happening here, electromagnetic fields, all this kind of stuff. It gives, all those things give nods to your typical 411 cases. So I think that this place, you know, should be considered in that same realm. And like we've said a number of times, the forest is also a hub for witchcraft and the occult. It's known to be a site where various rituals have been performed, often due to its reputation as a place of intense paranormal activity. So, I mean, these mystics, these witches and warlocks and whatnot, there's a good chance that many of them are frolicking here because of the power that the forest holds and not necessarily the power that the forest demands. But these rituals range from pagan practices to modern spiritual and paranormal rituals. You know, of course, the ancient pagans also revered this forest. People are drawn, of course, to the forest's reputation for these otherworldly experiences. So, of course, they believe it to be a powerful spot for spiritual or magical activities. And, of course, the forest, given its ancient presence, it's a favored location for these pagan practices and these neo-pagan beliefs. Rituals here often involve nature worship, celebrations of solstices and equinoxes, or ceremonies intended to harness the forest's alleged energies, like we just said. And these practices might include the creation of altars, offerings to spirits or deities associated with nature. There have been numerous sightings of the Leshen here, the Leshy as it's sometimes called. These worshippers might also chant or pray to the environment or to the trees or to whatever spirits are in them. They might look for harmony or personal purification. Individuals going here seeking spiritual healing or enhanced meditation experiences are drawn to the darkness and the feeling that the forest provides. There's a unique energy there that people say aid in spiritual healing. Meditation sessions are often done here in groups, aimed to connect with the forest energy. That is just crazy stuff, guys. But it's ancient stuff that we're still doing. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff is not beyond what humans used to typically do all the time. We're just doing it in yoga pants and sports bras now. But yeah, so healing rituals often involve these guided meditators, these guided meditations, you're laying on your hands, the use of crystals, this new age stuff, right? And that's the kind of stuff like that's very, very man-made. We can trace the new age invention back to, I don't remember his exact name. I did a deep dive on him once, and it's so crazy how this one man, like 50 or 80 years ago, I don't remember, guys, don't quote me on anything I'm about to say, but it basically, all your new age crystal belief, all that kind of stuff was really, it's been around for a long time, but it was combined into a religion fairly recently called the New Age. And it was right around the time that the Antrovis cult was really big as well. Believing that ancient space aliens were going to come down and their spaceships made of human flesh were going to carry these chosen people to the moon or Mars or wherever it was. And this new age religion with these crystals and this, this watered down Wicca that we've got now, all that kind of stuff, that was all done by just a white guy. Not even that long ago. Don't fall for that kind of stuff. I'm serious. This stuff is crazy, and it's very satanic. But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry if that's your thing. If it's your thing, it's your thing, okay? We all have our own thing. Anyway, paranormal investigators and enthusiasts sometimes conduct rituals intended to communicate with spirits or unearth deeper insights into the unexplained phenomena reported within the forest. And these might include seances, use of Ouija boards has been discovered, or other forms of spirit communication as well. And, that's one place too, like that's witchcraft too, trying to conjure spirits and stuff like that, that is a form of witchcraft. You got to be really careful with that kind of stuff. The occult rituals, of course, are the most sensationalized. They're believed to be conducted by individuals or groups seeking to tap into like supernatural portals or energies for various mystical purposes. And there have been accounts of groups as many as 60 people in this circle trying to open portals using occult rituals, which is crazy and creepy. I can't imagine coming up on that in the middle of the night. And these rituals are often shrouded in secrecy and can contribute to the lore surrounding the forest, of course. And the local community too, because this is always like, how does the community, because there's a whole town outside of Hoia Baciu, and how do they feel about these activities? And some report that the influx of visitors is very intense and overwhelming, while others are happy that people are coming to the forest just because they want the tourism, But it does seem like everybody's kind of on edge about the occult rituals that do take place in the forest. Authorities will even monitor these activities from time to time with secret cameras, stuff like that, or just following individuals, checking in on people who go into the woods, all that, if they can find them. A lot of the times they can't even find them, but authorities do their best to sort of monitor the forest to make sure that these rituals are not getting out of hand, because a few times they have, and we all know stories of that happening. But, one of the most interesting things that I read throughout all of this was that there were no runes or megaliths or bizarre structures found in the forest. But there was and have been all of these things found all around right outside the forest. So it seems that this place has been somewhat forbidden for a very long time. Not only has the forest itself not been cut down, deforested, but it also doesn't seem to have ever been inhabited, even into ancient times. So I looked at some of the historical context of the region, and the area around Cluj-Napoca, which is where this forest is, was once part of the Dacian kingdom before the Roman conquest in 106 AD. And the Dacians were known for their fortresses and spiritual practices, many of which were closely tied to natural sites believed to possess mystical qualities, just like this forest. And while specific artifacts and structures from this civilization within the forest have never been found, outside of the forest contains archaeological sites all over the place. Okay? So post-conquest, the Romans established the province of Dacia, and the area saw significant Roman cultural and architectural influences. Again, direct evidence within the forest is still lacking, but the proximity to known Roman sites could definitely suggest peripheral usage or significance of the forest. And then it goes on, through the Middle Ages and into modern times, the area has seen various uses and mentions in historical records. The forest itself might have served as a boundary or a natural resource for nearby settlements. Those specific uses during those periods haven't really been documented. So nobody's really doing anything with this forest that is allegedly basically a Stargate, potentially a portal, a location of dimensional bleed. Archaeological findings in the vicinity of the forest include artifacts from the Bronze Age, Roman coins, medieval pottery, which indicates human activity and settlement around the forest, but not in the forest. And these items generally point to the historical richness of the region, but don't necessarily confirm any sort of ancient civilization within the forest itself. There's been absolutely no significant archaeological excavations conducted within the forest that have uncovered anything or indicated any sort of ancient civilization in the forest. Very interesting stuff. One of the strangest things, I should say, is that there's never been any bodies found in the forest. They've never found dead people in the forest. For a place that's renowned for seeing ghosts, spirits, being the gateway to hell, the home of the devil, portals, significant human traffic, all that kind of stuff, I did find it very fascinating that there is no recollection or recordings of any bodies being found. Though I did find some creepypastas that, suggested like park rangers and stuff being torn to pieces in the park. I couldn't really actually find any proof of that or correlating stories elsewhere. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's far more stories of things going in and not returning than there are of, deaths in the forest. Or things going in and coming out years later without any explanation. Like this story, years ago, a little 5-year-old girl got lost in the forest. And a massive search was organized, but unfortunately, she had simply vanished without a trace. This girl just wandered in there, wandered away from her parents, and just vanished. And nobody could explain what happened. There were extensive searchings going on, and it got to the point that people lost hope in finding her. Time went by, and 5 years went by. And after 5 years, she simply walked out of the forest. And she was still wearing the same exact clothes that she wore on the day of her disappearance. She had somehow not aged a single day in the past 5 years. It was obvious that she hadn't aged. So where had she been? How was she able to survive on her own for the past 5 years? And why had she not aged, right? If this story is true, and this is, again, one of those legends that's been passed down time and time again, told amongst friends, around campfires, written down once it was deemed important enough to do so. Just another piece of oral history that lends some kind of credibility to the idea that there might be some sort of Stargate or portal system in the forest. Hoia Baciu is crazy, but what do you guys think is going on there? Do you think it's a portal to a parallel universe, or what do you think? Have you guys heard of this place before? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Listen, guys, I had a great time hanging out with you, as always. Please like up the show, share the show, invite your friends, subscribe if you made it this far into the show, and be on the lookout for our next episodes coming out this week. I'm really excited to try to give you guys more content, so we'll see how it goes. And as always, don't drink the water and question everything. Later.